Oh man, I'm sporting a really bad hangover, so I'm going to try and talk you through what I did with this. It's going to be a voiceover while I'm editing rather than actually talking in the video. So hopefully this kind of goes smooth, but you can see I'm, showing you exactly how bad the head sculpt was. You can see that there was the dodgy line in the hairline there, and I had that derpy, wonky eye. So I decided I was going to try and improve it, and you can see that sort of swampy green hair. It's really dark and flat, very uninspiring. So I figured if I do some improvements to the head sculpt, maybe paint the face a little bit, then maybe I could actually get something a little bit more decent. So what I did was I removed the hair. It was all glued down, so I had to warm it up, and I removed the glue, and there was about 4 different pieces to the hair. So I then decided to go in and try and remove the eyes, and the eyes are actually in there quite firm. You can see I made an absolute shit mess of it in there, which is a shame because I would have liked to have had it a bit more cleaner, but I wasn't sure how to get the eyes out. They're in a sort of like a socket piece, which I'll show you in a sec, but it's not too bad. You can see that the actual socket piece is okay, but you can see where the wonkiness came from. It's actually the transfer on the eye. It's actually not been placed on the eye straight. So what you end up getting is just an eye looking in the wrong direction. The one on the right was fine, but the one on the left that you saw that had the derpy eye was just wonky all over the place. And I decided I couldn't have that. So then I decided to get a hairdryer and warm everything up. And then when you warm everything up, the plastic is a little bit more malleable. So I then got a craft knife and I started to cut the eyes out of that section there individually. And that's pretty much what I got in the end, was these sort of eyes on a little bit of a stalk there that's left over. And then I decided I was going to try and fit them into the eye sockets just to see if they still actually fit. And lo and behold, they actually do fit, which isn't too bad. I mean, they're kind of a little bit loose, but if you really wanted to, you could actually shove them in there just like that. But I wanted to actually be able to articulate the eyes a little better. That's why I was sort of testing the fields to see what worked. And yeah, I could have just done this, and they're still slightly articulated, but one solid knock to the head would mean those eyes would just pop out and then rattle around inside the skull. So then I decided to actually use some cable clips, sort of the ones you use in the wall to bang into the wall to hold like phone lines and things like that. And I took out the nails from those, and I used 2 of those, and I dremeled a hole in the back of the eye sockets, and I just tested to see if that would work, and lo and behold, the drill piece was exactly the right size for the nail pieces. So then I thought, that's a bit better. Now I have some stems for the eyes. So then I decided to go ahead and just start gluing those down, and I always use like a brush on super glue as opposed to like just splodging any old glue on there, because I find brush on is a little easier for hobbying because it's just a lot more disciplined and it won't run all over the place. And then I just used some glue on the outside just to secure it better and hold it in place, because obviously if it twists around, the glue inside could come loose. So securing it on the outside works a little better, and voila, I actually have eyes on stalks which can hopefully fit into the head. So then I tried to slot them in, and it worked pretty well, to be honest. Admittedly, I got a bit scared at first because I put it in and there was a little bit of plastic in between that and the eye. So when I turn it around, it looks like a horror show, but it just turned out to be a bit of loose plastic. I flicked it out, and there we are. Finally, it actually kind of works. And look, the eye rolls around. It's quite secure, but then I figured I could probably make it a little bit more secure. So that's where the next item comes in, and that thing is Needetite, also known as green stuff. So I'm going to use that in the back of the head to try and secure those eyeballs a little bit more in place, so if it does get a knock, they won't fall out. But I also still want a certain level of articulation when I use it. So what I decided to do was I wrapped each eye, or the stems, in a small thin layer of cling film, because that creates a barrier between the eye and the green stuff, because it's quite sticky when you first use it. and the green stuff can fuse with the item you're trying to hold in place. So it's best to just, use a tiny thin layer of cling film, and that will actually keep a tiny thin barrier between whatever you're using and the green stuff. And then once it solidifies, it actually becomes like a nice sort of solid but still slightly malleable plastic, which is great really. It's absolutely brilliant for hobbyists, much more sturdy and usable than say milliput for these types of jobs. So then I just started applying some of the Kneadertite into the base of the skull there, just to try and get a sort of a firm area around the eyeballs, so that when I'm moving them around they won't fall out anytime soon. However, it did cause another little problem, which is I used a little bit too much. So then it actually restricted the movement of the eye a little bit more than I wanted. So I had to go in and remove some of it. But still, it worked really well. It holds the eyes in place. They're not coming out anytime soon, and I can still get some articulation out of it. And then I decided next thing to do would be to get painting. And this is the part where I was a little bit unsure about what to do, because I wanted that top piece of the hair piece secure, but I also wanted the back bit to be still removable so that I could use the purse system. So then I decided to just glue that top piece of the hair down and use some of the Kneadertite to actually try and knock away that sort of weird ugly hairline by sculpting in some new hair. So hopefully that works. I remember David Withers, so I promised I'd give him a shout out. He actually did this to his HC Toys first on one of the Facebook groups, and it was a great idea and it works really well. I'm not entirely sure what he used to take out that hairline, but I'm going to use Kneadertite green stuff because I'm very familiar with it and it works really well for this type of thing. And also because it is green already, it kind of works with the hair. So I just got to work adding it, and that's when I decided to use a few of my clay sculpting tools. You can use anything really. At one point I even end up using a craft knife, but I just put the Kneadertite onto the hairline, and I formed some small snakes of the Kneadertite around that hairline, and then sort of blended it all in and slowly but surely smoothed it out, and then made new hairlines all the way around and get it really fine and tight, and just keep working at it, just keep practicing, keep moving that tool around and actually try and go with the flow of the hairstyle. Unfortunately, halfway through my wife interrupted me and forced me to eat me dinner, so yeah, I just ended up accidentally filming that. But never mind, moving on. And then we got the this is the craft knife. So then I decided to just start getting the finer details of the hairlines in with that craft knife, and slowly but surely I ended up getting a hairline in there and taking out that ugly seam. And I was surprised by how easy it actually was in the end, because even I'm not very good at that kind of thing, so even I was able to do it. I'm pretty sure you would too. And then once I'd finished and I was waiting for that hairline to dry, because Kneadertite takes quite a few hours to actually solidify. So while I was waiting for that to happen, I decided to dry brush a tiny little bit of white acrylic over the face paints again, to try and bring that sort of face paint up a little bit, because it was really thin and it looked a little bit shoddy, and I wanted the eyes and the mouth to look a little better, and the black makeup around the eye is a little bit too solid, so adding a small dab of white acrylic paint around those areas sort of helps thin it out and make it look a little bit more faded at the edges. So then once I was finished actually doing that with the white acrylic paint, I just checked my handiwork out, and yeah, it worked really well. I used some carmine red on the lips, carmine red acrylic, and I just a tiny thin layer around the lips, just to sort of bring that redness up a little bit, and also give them a little bit more of a glossy wet look, because the lips just wasn't working very well. I didn't do a lot to them, to be honest. It was literally just a stroke of the brush, and it seemed to work really well. And then you can see that the hair is actually drying out now, and it seems to be a lot more finer detail, and it has definitely taken out that ugly seam. So now I can get on and just start painting it. But just before I actually started to get on with the paint, I accidentally hit it with my finger and actually made a bit of a dent in the hair. It wasn't fully dry, so I just went back in and re-sculpted the hair a little bit just to get it back to where it was before. And yeah, and then I moved on and started to do the paint. And I used several different green paints, but I used cadmium green, and then I used some burnt umber, and I sort of mixed those together to give it like a dirty green effect. And then to thin out the green and make it look lighter, I used just a flat yellow, and I mixed all these three together. You can see in the palette that's the burnt umber and green, and some burnt umber just there. And then I just mixed the greens and yellows together to give me a few mixes of different paint there, so I could lighten that hair up a little bit. Because in all honesty, the dark paint that they used just made it look like swampy crap. So yeah, I definitely wanted to lighten up that hair and make it look a little bit more lighter and movie accurate, because at certain points in the film he actually looks like he didn't do the hair properly and it's quite faded. And yeah, you can see that back piece of the hair is still removable, which I was really happy about. I really wanted that. But if you wanted to, you could just literally use some more Nuditite and seal up the seams at the back of the head. But I'm never really going to be looking at the back of the head, so it doesn't bother me. And just fair warning, I accidentally forgot to click record when I was painting the hair. So the next footage you're going to see is actually of the final piece, because I'm an idiot, and sometimes when you click the record button, sometimes you think it's recording, but obviously sometimes it doesn't work. And voila, here it is. Yeah, it was, all in all, it was only a few hours work. It's not a really tough job to do. But as you can see, it just adds just that little bit more to the head sculpt. It really does make the colours pop a little more. The hair is a little bit lighter. It might be a bit too light, but it doesn't really bother me really. And I really like the fact that I can now move the eyes around and pose them. It can actually express a little bit more, and you can see the eyes are straight, and that's the most important part, guys. And it actually looks like a 1/6 scale figure and not some cheap horrible plastic shite toy. And that's it really, guys. I can't really say any more than that. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe, and if you could do me a favour now, if you can get the fuck out of my cave, I'm sure the next video is only a few days away. Bye bye. Ooh, I really like this hangover voice. Sexy.